It's a summer series on the Everyday VOpreneur podcast where I am inviting everyday VOpreneurs just like you to come on the show, ask me a question, and get an answer. Fingers crossed that it's a good one. Otherwise, I will be judged by history and social media. Cameron Pister, welcome to the Everyday VOpreneur podcast. What's your question?
Thank you for having me back. Okay.
By the way, if you start with anything related to improv,
don't think I didn't think about it. I was going to
The
go,
show
surprise,
is
this
over.
is a surprise improv session for you.
I will improvise my way right out of the recording and we're done.
And I will never be invited back ever.
That's right. You're cut off.
I believe it.
Okay, now what's
It
your
is
real
not
question?
about improv. I have a question about how you handle leads. So
Okay.
as I was going through my CRM, and I've been using Nimble and I really enjoy it, but when a lead goes through the entire life cycle,
Sure.
do you have a strategy for a second round of a life cycle for somebody who you've never heard back from them? It's not like they've unsubscribed. They haven't said we don't use Voiceover. You just have never gotten a response. Do you go back through like after a certain period of time? Do you just consider them dead, or do you try to find somebody else at the same place? What do you do at that point?
Yeah, you just answered the question, so we can pretty much just go ahead and wrap this one up and
Nailed it.
call it a record episode. I think there's two different strategies that I would primarily lean into in a case like that. I am of the belief that if they go through your entire funnel, we'll call it, whatever that may look like, your introductory email, maybe a series of follow-ups or whatever, but they go through that entire process and at no point do they tell you to take a flying leap or unsubscribe or whatever, then in my mind, they are probably still interested, at least in some capacity. Now, could there be other alternatives? They never saw your messages. They landed in spam. They just kept deleting and hoped that you would go away. I mean, sure, all of those are possibilities, but I tend to try to think more optimistically about these things. So we're just going to pretend that it means that they must still be interested in some capacity. So
Okay, wait, hold on. Look at it optimistically. That's new for me. I gotta
yes,
write this down.
it's a very foreign approach, but I think that
It
there's
is.
something to that approach. So that is one of the things that I think that is really important, a key element in all of this. Because you know what, in all sincerity, our default is to they hate us, we suck, why does nobody want to hire me, whatever. And I
Yeah.
mean, if that's the mindset that you're bringing into it, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure right out of the gate, I think. But I do think there are a couple of things that you can do. One, when my leads come to the end of my initial sequence, my initial follow-up sequence, I put them into what I call the dormant stage in my workflow in Nimble. And I let them sit there for a while. And one of two things will happen at the end. Either I'm going to start them in a secondary sequence. Maybe I'll wait a couple of months, maybe like wait until the next quarter and start a secondary sequence. Might revisit some of the original things that we discussed, might try to come from a different angle or whatever, but try to put them through another sequence and see whether or not that produces a result. The other alternative is what you mentioned, which is, can I find somebody else at this company? Because in a lot of instances, there's more than one right person that you could potentially be reaching out to, or we're trying to make our best guess, right? This job title sounds like it makes a little bit more sense than that job title or whatever. And we pick somebody, maybe we got the right person, maybe we didn't. And so in those instances where there is potentially more than one person that you could be reaching out to, it's worth giving that person another shot. One thing that I do not do though, is I don't delete anybody. So I actually went through a spell earlier this year where I started going back through some of my original leads, going back to like 2016, 2017, when I first started working with Nimble. And, you know, at that point I was building everything from scratch. I didn't have a solid workflow. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just putting people in, contacting, whatever. And so when my new commercial demo came in, I actually thought, why not go back and just see for the fun of it? So I went right back to the very beginning and I had about maybe 50 or 100 people who were old leads that I hadn't heard from in years, hadn't reached out to in years because got lost, didn't follow up, never heard back again, whatever the case may be. But I thought I'm going to start here. And so I would look each one up, figure out whether or not they're still there. If they are, great. Send another email, try to spark a conversation again. If they're not, see if I can find, who's the new person in that job title. Did somebody take over for them, whatever, and kind of start over again. And so that in and of itself, because I wanted to get started right away with this new demo, didn't have a ton of time at that point because of other things that were going on to go out and start finding a whole bunch of new leads. So it was like, okay, well, let me just go back and try again. So if I had just deleted all of those people because they never responded to me originally, I wouldn't have that to go back to. And in all honesty, several of the people ultimately did respond. And I'm talking about some of these people that I haven't reached out to in 5 or 6 years or more. And they ultimately did respond because time passes anyway, but nobody's paying attention to how long it's been. Right? None of these people are going back through their inbox and saying, Mark, like you reached out to me for the last time in 2019, and this is incredibly awkward. Like, what are you doing? They're like, hey man, it's been a while. That's it. That's all they're thinking. Right?
Yeah.
Now, in our mind, we're sitting there thinking, I can't reach out to this person because I haven't emailed them in 5 years. Guess what? They have no idea.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, and I don't just mean you. I mean anybody who is listening to this and watching this right now. I hate to break it to you, but you are probably not so universally important to that person that they are going to remember the exact last date and time that you communicated, and they probably don't care.
Yeah.
So when you just reach out and say, hey, it's been a while, they're like, oh yeah, it's been a while. Like nobody's actually keeping track. So those are the things that I'm doing. I think there's the secondary sequence is an option. I think that finding a new contact is an option. And I think that holding on to them, even if you've done those things, maybe you've put them through that secondary sequence, or you've tried, maybe this lead A at the company went through the first sequence, waited a couple of months, sent them through a second sequence, didn't get anything. So now you're going to try lead B. You're going to do the same thing. Maybe put them through a sequence, maybe put them through a second sequence. You don't get anything. I still am not going to delete them at that point. And I know that there is an argument for, there's plenty of fish in the sea, or, whatever you want to call it, valid. But when I'm running them through a sequence in Nimble, it really doesn't cost me anything.
Right.
Right? Like I'm not, other than making sure that they're added to the sequence, parts of that workflow are automated. It's not like it's costing me a ton of time to sit down and do all of that. And keep in mind, in the process of these things, I am still looking for, is this person active on Instagram? Can I communicate with them there? Are they active on LinkedIn? Can I drop a couple of comments and try to get back on their radar again? I've found that to be incredibly effective in some cases where maybe I don't get an email response, but I see that somebody's really active on LinkedIn, and I try dropping some comments, getting on their radar there. And I've had that turn into audition opportunities in the past. And so I think that's another element of this, is just recognizing that there's more than one way to go about this too. It's not just exclusively about email. Maybe somebody doesn't check their email all the time or whatever, but they're definitely posting daily on LinkedIn, and maybe you can get on their radar, or get their attention there. And so that's something else to definitely be thinking about. But unless somebody specifically unsubscribes or, tells me to take the flying leap or whatever, I'm going to always try to find a way to maintain communication, because you just never know. My record, I've talked about this, I think it was in Playbook I talked about this. My record is 9 years.
Yeah.
From the first original contact until somebody hired me, 9 years.
I remember that.
And there's people that are like, 9 years, good Lord, that's ridiculous. But again, it wasn't really costing me anything.
Right.
The occasional follow-up email. And then when they ultimately hired me, like the first job turned into a second and a third and a fourth and whatever, right? So
yeah, what did they say? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is to plant today. And that 20-year ago seed that you just left, it takes fruit trees a long time to finally start producing fruit. You never know what's going to happen. Now, do you prioritize finding new leads instead of going back to old ones, and you do it only if you have like a time crunch and you don't have time for new leads?
I definitely want to always have new people coming in.
Yeah.
But in those instances where it's like, oh, I got 5 minutes between this meeting and that meeting, why don't I
already
just
have
go
the
and-
lead.
Yeah,
It's easier
let's
to
just go
check
grab
on 'em.
somebody out of my CRM and make a contact. And so I think there's ways to incorporate both of those. But yeah, ultimately, I'm always trying to get new people into the pipeline, and I do think that's really important, because the reality is, if somebody's gone through your sequence a couple times and hasn't responded, there's probably a lower probability that they're going to respond at that point. But it doesn't mean just give up and let them go. And so I'm still going to try to keep in contact. But I think it really is important to look at are there other places where I can communicate with these people as well? And I think that's got to be part of it. Email, I think, still works, but I also definitely see strong use cases for social media and platforms where you can very clearly see that people are active on the regular, because it gives you an easy point of contact to try to get yourself top of mind.
Yeah. I like that. I tend to forget about that, not even just as a follow-up, but if there's been no response via email, I've had the same inadvertent, I would say, success as far as making contact with people is, I found them on LinkedIn and then I put them into my CRM and then I don't see anything from an email. And there was one in particular I was really interested in. So I started commenting on their stuff that they were doing on LinkedIn. They were
Mhm.
talking about projects and stuff. Um, and I did end up in a few back and forth conversations with them on LinkedIn
Yep.
that would have maybe been an easier trigger then for a follow-up email down the line or a conversation via LinkedIn DMs. So
And you make notes of
it's a
that in
good
your
tip.
CRM so that here's where I communicated with them last, here's what we talked about, whatever. So
Yeah.
you've got that sort of stuff on file. I think that's really important. Something else that I would suggest from a CRM standpoint for this too is the more segmentable, I don't know if that's a word, but the more segmentable that your CRM is, the
Yeah.
more opportunities you create for yourself to be able to reach out. And so an example of that is, recently I came across a really cool article that offered a couple of pro tips for LinkedIn users. I'm able to go through in my CRM and I'm able to find the people who I am actively communicating with on LinkedIn, or have actively communicated with on LinkedIn in the past. And I'm able to
Mm-hmm.
create a group of just those LinkedIn people. And then I can
Mm-hmm.
send them this message and say, hey, by the way, totally random, but I came across this article that I thought you might be really or you might find really helpful because I know you're active on LinkedIn. And so there's a reach out opportunity, but
Yeah.
that opportunity only exists because I was able to segment my database in that way.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that, I've been very open about some of the struggles that I've had in e-learning lately, and losing a bunch of clients to AI and all of that sort of stuff. And so I can make a note in my CRM that this is an e-learning client, and that, I can put the AI tag beside them or something like that. And I recently came across an article that talked about AI in e-learning, and there were good and bad, right? It was a very balanced article. Here's why we love this, and here's why we think it's not great at all. And so now I'm able to segment out not just to e-learning, but to e-learning people that I know are using AI and saying, hey, here's something that you might find interesting. And so I do
Mm-hmm.
think there's also something to be said for the more ways that you can segment your audience, the more ways that there are to reach out to those people. And that goes for anybody. That's clients, prospects, leads from 5 years ago. It doesn't matter if you've got a series of leads that you found via Instagram, and those are all people that you've messaged with on Instagram in the past. It doesn't matter how long ago you found them. You come across something that's really cool or helpful or whatever about Instagram, that you could target those people specifically because you know that that's where they came from, is Instagram. Now you're able to reach out to them with a relevant message, and it gives you another form of follow-up outside of just the usual sequences that we're sending in voiceover stuff.
Yeah. Man, you're so smart, Mark. You're really good at this. You should do this more often.
Yes, thank you. I will be cutting this segment and sending it to my wife's phone directly. There's going to be a quote graphic made of that and a poster
Mm-hmm.
hanging on the wall right beside me.
Yeah.
Even though I know that it was delivered with the utmost sarcasm and possible insincerity,
I
I'm going to
deliver
take it
everything with
otherwise.
sarcasm and love. So
So does that answer your question?
that does. And it gives me a lot of ideas on how to revitalize outside of just throwing them back into another email sequence. So I really appreciate it.
I think that the desire to give up easily is strong,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that if we're putting in the effort to send emails or messages or whatever, and we're just not getting responses, it just doesn't feel worth it. I think the flip side of that is there are a lot of people who hire voice actors that don't hire voice actors every day.
Right.
There are a lot of people who hire voice actors that might only hire voice actors a couple of times a year. And so just because they didn't respond to you this time when you reached out doesn't mean that the next time when you reach out, they don't have a project going on, because maybe this time they didn't. And so rather than us just adopting this mindset of this is pointless, this doesn't work, it's not worth it, they don't care, I'm just going to piss them off, I'm just going to annoy them, etc. I come from a mindset of, okay, they just didn't need me
Yeah.
today. But maybe the next time that I reach out, maybe the next quarter when I send another series of follow-ups, maybe this is the time when they'll need me. And at this point, when they're already not hiring me, I don't have anything to lose. Right? The only real loss is by giving up on all the leads. I mean, if I gave up on every person who didn't respond to me the first couple of times that I wrote them, I don't think I'd have work
Yeah.
like at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that kind of goes along with the you can't just throw spaghetti at a wall kind of thing, is if you're always just hunting for new and you're never, I mean, besides the original follow-up sequence, which once a
Yep.
week, once every couple weeks, whatever it is, that persistence is going to pay off. And it's not going to take all of them responding and hiring you.
Yep.
It's only going to take a few of them hiring and responding to you to keep you going.
Yep. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, you know what
Thank
to
you.
do.
I do.
You've got some follow-up emails to send.
I do.
All right, Cameron. Thanks for coming
Thank
on
you
the
so
show.
much,
Thanks for your
Mark.
question.